Hey there, this is Perch, and going to talk a little bit about what does it take for an indie comic, a comic that's not published by Marvel and DC to be successful in the comic shop. So that last bit is important in the comic shop. And I'll preface this by saying your goal may not be to get into the comic shop. I want you there. I think a lot of readers want you there, and ultimately, I hope that is your goal, is to get into the comic shop. But there is a perfectly viable market that's digital only. There's web comics, and there's plenty of opportunity for you as a creator to get your comic out there and to have an audience that has nothing to do with being inside of a comic shop. Now, I would argue, and I'll just kind of throw that out there, and maybe the subject of another video, it's still in your best interest as a comic creator to go make friends with the local comic shop, to know the owner, to understand the trends, to see what people are buying, to kind of understand your market. I think that's smart, and it's something that a lot of creators used to do, and they do a lot less. And at first I thought it was just me, hey, nobody wants to come see me. But it's actually, you'll see this, you'll hear this from retailers kind of across the country, is that there's a lot less time spent kind of in the shop really getting to know the business. People may come in, but there's less interest there. And plenty of theories behind that. And that's, again, it's subject for another video. But no, when you talk about what makes you successful, and the answers are going to be pretty mundane. But and yet people seem to forget these answers on a regular basis. So first off, if you're an indie comic creator, consistency is critical. So don't launch your comic out. If you're gonna, first of all, let's just assume for the moment you're not talking one graphic novel or a one-off story. You're talking about a series. Or let's say you have a number of ideas for a number of different series that are all one-shot comics, but you've got a bunch of them. Either way. So the first thing, and the first most important kind of rule to live by, and it really, I would say, is 50% of the game, is consistency. It's get a comic out, publish it in May, publish the second issue in June, publish the third issue in July, the fourth issue in August, and so on. Get it out on a regular heartbeat. If you can do that, you send a number of different messages. First, people get comfortable seeing you on the shelves. Retailers know that you exist and will promote you more because there's some, the idea of reliability, dependability is the number one kind of name of the game in a comic shop. You want to sell what you can rely on. And it's very hard to put something up and give a lot of attention to it if there's no number two, or there's no really promise of another comic, or who knows when it's going to come out. Maybe you publish the first issue and then the third issue is a year later. That hurts. It hurts the big publishers, and it hurts the smaller creators even more, because at least the big publishers have a number of books going out that have the Marvel banner, the DC banner, or the Image banner, and that's how they're able to kind of make it, is even when there's delays, because there's still consistency of shipment. So if you're an indie comic creator, it's important that you have consistency in your work. And if you are doing a bunch of one shots, if you don't have a series in mind, but you want a bunch of stories, sit down and plan out your year, plan out your roadmap, if you will, of books you're going to put out. Maybe you're putting out a book a quarter. Maybe you're putting out one every other month. Maybe one every 5 months. Be upfront about what you intend to do, and then do it. Make your pitch inside your comic or to the retailer that, yeah, you're going to produce this work and it's going to come out monthly, ideally monthly. That's how you build momentum. Um, or if not, it's going to come out every other month, and publish your schedule and then stick to it, which is probably leads to my second bit of advice, which is work ahead, meaning get ahead. Don't start putting your stuff into the market, even though you're so tempted to do, even though it'll be a burning kind of push in your body and your soul. Don't put out a comic until you have 4 comics in the bag, or in hand, at least. Get a good runway for yourself so that when life hits and things are slow and problems crop up or whatever else, you can fall back on that padding that you've made for yourself. It's really important, because if you lose consistency, it's very hard to get people back to the table. If you publish an issue 1, 2, and a 3 on time, and then issue 4 suddenly is 6 months late, a lot of people won't show up for issue 4, and they definitely won't show up for issue 5. So it's important to build that consistency into yourself. I gave the advice earlier in another video about passion. Just do it. That still is very true. Just do it. Just get your work out there, but be smart about how you're doing it if you're trying to build a long-term career. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, most people blow this. So by just being consistent, by just setting expectations about what's going to happen and when, you are already at a huge advantage. So kind of taking the other video into account, if you just get up and you just start, even if it's not perfect, you just start and you get work done, you're already ahead of half your competition. And then if you start publishing at any kind of reliable, regular rate, you're even more, you've lapped your competition again. And that is what puts you ahead. The next bit of advice I would say is learn from your competition. In other words, learn from the big publishers. What do they do? You see them putting on the big variant covers and really selling a comic by its cover. Well, here's the good news, bad news. Your comic's not popular enough to get Art Adams or legendary artists to want to come in and do a cover for you, unless you're going to pay them incredibly well. You're not going to have that ability. But what the part of that lesson that you should pay attention to is the cover really matters. If you have a catchy cover and more importantly, a professional cover, you're again setting yourself in front in terms of the comics that are out for sale in indies. And this again, go to a comic store, put on a critical eye. Don't look at it like somebody who's in the business or a longtime comic fan. Look at it from a perspective of somebody who's coming into the shop, casual knowledge of what's on there, what's on the shelves, and what these comics are all about. What jumps out at you? What stands out? And you'll notice that there's many indie comics, there's a lack of professionalism in how the cover's put together. Maybe the logo's at the bottom, which is generally a bad idea if you're going to be on shelves, because for many stores that it's going to hide the logo. That's a problem. Or they've gotten cutesy with some of the message box, or there's little things you can do to your comic that make it look amateurish, and you want to avoid that. You do want to take kind of the most professional, tight-looking comic covers that you might see from an Image or a Marvel or a DC, and you want to replicate what makes it look tight, what makes it look professional and buttoned up. And the reason why you want to do that, well, because you're trying to get somebody to spend $3, who knows what, on your comic. So you want to look nicely sharp. You want to look like there's a professional bit of work going on there. I think that's one of the things that got Alterna to the table, in addition to the price point, which is very attractive, is the covers are typically put together in a way that feels like a legit comic and not like some indie book that is, kind of done off the cuff. And this is where, as a creator, you probably have your own taste, your own styles, your own standards. You want the book to be done your way. And that's fine, but you have a choice to make. Either you want to do the book your way, or you want to do the book in a professional way, in a way that's really going to help market and sell it to people. And maybe you're super awesome and your way equals professional. That's the best. You've got all the stars have aligned. Life is good. But I've met a lot of creators who've come in to sell their books, and they don't have a deal through Diamond, so they're literally pounding the pavement or sending me emails saying, carry my book. And I look at the cover and I look at the pitch, and the pitch feels like it's done by a guy out of their garage. And so I think to myself, hey, this person has passion. I love it. I want to put it up. But I have to look at that pitch, and then I have to translate that pitch to a customer. I basically, the creator is not going to be in the shop selling the book. I'm going to be in the shop selling the book. So I have to make sure that the pitch is good for me to get that customer in. So every book I look at, I go, and this includes the big publishers too. When I see an event like War of the Realms, I think to myself, all right, how am I going to pitch this book? How am I going to convince customers to buy it? If I'm going to buy several hundred copies, then I better have a pretty good pitch, because the book, you hope the books sell themselves, but the books never completely sell themselves. So you have to, be able to speak passionately about it, and you have to be able to be confident about it. So as a creator, you've got to give the retailer that pitch. You've got to give them, this is why this book is good for you. This is why this book will sell copies. And again, things like, this is the first part of a 5-issue series, and 4 of the 5 issues are done, and I'm working on the 5th. So the person who buys into this is going to get the whole series. That's a good one. Or maybe you're pitching it as, hey, if you have customers that really like classic sword and sorcery Conan type stories, then this comic is going to take those elements, and it's going to be, like the 1970s Conan stories or whatever. I mean, give the retailer the pitch. What is this book? What is it going to do? Why? What kind of fan will like this book? And really present it both in the cover and the appearance, and also the overall pitch. The cover is part of your pitch, because at the end of the day, this thing is going to go on a shelf, and people are going to walk by and they're going to be drawn by that cover. And so you want to be able to draw them in. You want to basically get every tool you have to sell your book. I mean, really, there's a lot of other things. There's another video talking about how do you get into Diamond, how do you make that process work for yourself. Who are publishers that are accepting work right now? How can you do it? I mean, we'll do specific videos on those, but the things I mentioned: be consistent, have a plan for consistency, have a roadmap for your comics, have a really strong pitch and a cover, and a who will like this book. That information you can also take to publishers or stores or wherever you're going to go, and that information is what's ultimately going to get you in the door. And I think, the last thing I'll leave with is go to the store, go in there, what's selling, observe. Most comic shop owners, they're probably feeling pretty harassed. They're irritated at Diamond. They're trying to make this business work. So if you go in and you give them an idea of how you can make their life easier, better, simpler, then you'll have a friend for life. So can you go in and say, hey, how about I do some on Free Comic Book Day? Why don't I come in? I'm not a famous artist, but why don't I come in and just do some commissions for characters for free? Maybe I'll spend 4 or 5 hours. And by the way, there's an old rule of thumb in the business: never work for free. This isn't working for free. You're offering a business. You're trying to get your self off the ground for your comic. The business is you, so you're in business for you. And one of the cleverest things that I saw a guy do, and he's done it for a few years now, is he basically goes in, he sits down in the shop at Free Comic Book Day, and he just draws. He sits there and he's got a big tablet of paper, and he just draws the classic characters, draws the Wolverine, draws Spider-Man, draws Batman, draws Superman. He just draws. And parents come in there with their kids, and comic fans are there, and the guy may make a little bit of money selling off those pages, but also making a name for themselves, putting their portfolio together. Save digital everything you do, take photos, get this stuff together. You're also sending a message to that comic shop owner that you're serious about this, that you want to be part of this business, that you're interested in the environment, and use that time wisely. Watch what people buy, watch what they gravitate to. If somebody comes up and wants you to draw a picture for them, and you're taking their money to do that, ask them what they buy, ask them what they like, ask them why they wanted that comic. It's been fascinating to me with Free Comic Book Day, especially when you just lay the comics out on the table. People come up and they pick what they want. They can take all or 2 or 1 or whatever the model your shop happens to be. The rules about what sells to a casual audience are completely in play there. Here's an area where people are getting things for free, but they're still going to be discerning about what they buy and kind of what they move to. So it's just amazing learning if you do it right. Anyway, there you go. That's my little bit. How do you get your comic? That's at a high level. Probably should get into more detail, but there you go. Hope that was informative, and from at least a comic shop owner's perspective. Maybe you disagree. Let me know. Tell me I'm completely wrong. There's a better way to do it. That would be awesome. Subscribe if you're inclined. Share with a friend. Hit the bell for notifications. Follow me on Twitter and give me some more ideas for things you want me to talk about. Thanks.